May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts together find their way into the heart of God this evening. Amen. We are the Holy Family. Our offspring, our neighbors, our fellow townsfolk, we are the story. We are the story of God, the story of love made flesh. And for a moment on this night, we know more and better of ourselves than we may in the rest of the year. So let us just bask in that truth. Some of you have heard me tell this story before because I share it every year on Facebook. It is my family's favorite Christmas story. My daughter, age 5, walked into the kitchen a few years ago sobbing and sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. She could not stop crying. And finally, "What's wrong, Eloisa?" we kept saying. And finally, oh, she's here. Sorry, Eloisa. I forgot to warn you I was going to tell a story about you. I forgot you were coming. So Eloisa, finally, through heaves of sobs and gasps, says, "The elf on the shelf fell down! He fell down on the floor!" Sobbing, 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 sobbing. She was completely inconsolable. I say to her, "That's okay, I'll fix it." "No," Eloisa says, "he can't be touched by human hands. He'll lose his magic." She is inconsolable, hysterically crying. She can't stop. My husband, Andy, the stepfather of the year, besides Joseph, the stepfather of Jesus, right? He says to Eloisa, "It's okay, nobody panic. I read this on the internet because this has happened before. Take the stocking from the youngest person in the house and the stocking from the oldest person in the house and pick him up with the stocking so only the stockings touch him. Since Santa has touched both of those stockings, the elf's magic doesn't go away. Let's try it." Cecilia, who was about 9 years old at the time, says, "How do you know this anyway? Why did you bother to look this up on the internet?" And Andy says, "I'm getting a PhD in religious studies, Cecilia." Which was the funniest answer to that question. And I am glad, he now has his PhD, and I'm glad that that PhD is good for something. But the elf on the shelf, that friendly agent of the Santa police state, is the bane of my existence, some of you know. He can't be touched by human hands or his magic will be destroyed. I think the message of this holy night is exactly the opposite. Mary did not incubate the light of the world in her womb and birth God's love in human form, surrounded by cows and sheep, to tell us that Santa was magic, right? Christ was born to tell us that human hands do, in fact, birth magic into existence, into a world so in need of magic. The Christmas story is a story about God using the human body, a tiny baby boy, for God's glory. On this night, God shows up, encased in flesh, squirming and crying, trusting human hands to hold our Maker. Our hands don't destroy magic. They help God to create it. I wish that I was so mystical and at one with my Creator that I saw the magic in every person that I encountered on an everyday basis. In the internal fight we all have between good and evil, which is really a fight between love and fear, too often we let evil and fear win. In these hot mess times in our country, we have succumbed to our anger and our hurt and our greed and our grief and our separation from one another far too often. And this is why God gives us this sparkling, sacred night and this blessed story about God wearing the vulnerability of human skin. The night of candlelight, piercing darkness, and angels singing, we are given this silent, holy night to remind us who we are and whose we are. To remind us that we are the holy family, our offspring, our neighbors, our fellow townsfolk, our enemies. We are the story. We are capable of creating magic. God coming in the flesh, in the form of a helpless baby boy, gives us all hope that we too can become worthy of our birthright as children of God. We can transform from people who succumb to the worst of who we are to people who live into the best of who we can be. God has the audacity to make us part of love's plan for a world made whole. God shows us that the day we were born was also a holy announcement to the whole world. Here is my word made flesh. We are the holy family. We are love's word made flesh. And so the moral revolution this country needs is right here in this room. We are the story. And beloved, the work of Christmas has begun in you already. You are God's heart. You are God's hands. You are God's voice. You are God's feet. You are love's body birthed back into the world. Christ has no body but ours. So celebrate Christmas all year. Celebrate the incarnation. Celebrate love in bodies. Make magic happen with your hands, your voice, your heart, your feet. Be love in the flesh. We are the Holy Family. We are the story of God. Merry Christmas and Amen.